I'm Miranda Rake.
And I'm Sarah Wheeler, and this is The Mother of It All, where we take on motherhood through the lens of culture and culture through the lens of motherhood.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well, I just did my first at-home gel manicure thing.
Oh, wow.
It's like I feel like it's like the slang. I'm like 3 years behind the young people, and then I'm very excited about myself. When I figured out how to say like hits different or something, and I told my nieces, and they were like, "Yeah, no one said that for like years, Auntie Sarah." I feel the same way about the nails. Like all the young girls are doing the nails
At home?
Yes, they all have like every single one of them has like an
Wow.
at-home UV lamp. And
Wow.
and their nails look amazing.
Wow.
So I'm trying to be open about young generations instead of shitting on them like
Sarah.
the major media does so much. I think they're fine. They're not lonely. It's okay if they don't want to drink or have sex, and their nails look great. And yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I do notice. I'm trying to remember like where I was with a bunch of like teenage girls.
Yeah.
I don't know where I
seriously,
was.
Where were you?
But they all had like the nails.
I'm picturing you
big
like
nails. And I was like, oh, geez, like, wow. They were just very like glamorous. And I was like,
yeah, big
what?
nails are back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe they never left.
Oh, I know where I
sorry,
was.
though. I'm picturing you like undercover on a high school cheer squad or something.
Okay,
Being like, no, I'm definitely 17.
Do you want to know where I was?
Where?
Okay, so I've been subbing at this Montessori school.
Yes,
And usually
with your
they put
jumper.
me in the toddler room or the preschool room, which is where I want to be. And they needed help in the middle school. And so I got put in the middle school.
That's in some ways very similar to toddlers. When I had a toddler at home and I was doing like a job that was middle school counseling groups, it was very overwhelming because I felt like I was just using the same exact parts of my brain.
Yeah. There's like a herding cats vibe. They can go to the bathroom by themselves, which is nice. Like you don't have to deal with that.
Some of them, yeah.
I mean, if they can't, I don't need to know about it. It's not my problem.
They'll be too self-conscious to tell you.
No one's expecting me to help with that. Yeah.
Did you have break? Do you have like a
spring
your
break?
Kids have
Yeah.
Did
Yes.
you like
It was fine. It's over now.
you just kind of like got through it?
Yeah,
with
it was
glee?
all right. We enjoyed sleeping in because school starts at 7:55 and we have to get up at 6:45,
just
which
wrong.
is horrible. And so any break is glorious for that. Let's just not setting the
And your
alarm.
kids will do that. They'll sleep later than.
Oh, yeah. I think their natural
my kids are
wake-up
the
time
same.
is like 8.
Yeah, my kids are the same. They don't go to bed forever. So if you're
Right.
out there listening and you're like, "What? My kids get up at 5:30." I bet by 7 your house is quiet.
Right.
And we don't get there till like 11.
See, I get a lot of that, right, where people are like, oh, my kids pop up at 5. You're so lucky.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but are they still like talking to you at 9:15?
Oh, yeah. I'm up until midnight every night because I need like an hour of like revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yeah. We are the same. Ooh, we've been watching The
People don't
Pit.
stop bothering me.
Speaking of bedtime procrastination.
You can do the blood and guts.
It's not too much. They don't show a whole lot.
I like faint when I get blood drawn.
Oh,
Remember, I'm your friend that won't get her flu shot because she
yeah.
doesn't want to deal with the.
I'm going to come down. I'm going to fly down
You're gonna give it to me?
September, and I'm going to get a flu shot with you. We'll do it together at the same time.
If you brought me a flu shot and it was like hidden inside a box of C's chocolate sampler, and while you did it, you played the new Robin album.
Oh,
and
how are we not
just
talking
like
about
told
that?
me how beautiful I am, I would do it. I would get a flu shot. I took care of my kids for 36 hours while I felt sick after it.
Oh, God. We promised to keep ourselves tight today, but I do want to give like 2 minutes to the new Robin album.
So good.
It's my new special interest.
You're spinning? You got some spins for Robin?
I was like, I'm always exploring like, what is my flavor of neurodiversity? And I still don't know. But when I get obsessed with something, then I'm like, well, what is this telling me? And like,
it's
my
like
degree
you're like an 8-year-old boy in the subway map of New York.
And the person who falls on this
album?
is David. I've been texting him a lot about the new Robin album and trying to decide if we should go to LA for the shows in September,
Yeah.
which like we shouldn't, but I really want
Maybe
to.
we
Are you going
should.
to? Are you going
What?
to?
Yeah. Does David love Robin, or is he just like the closest physical person for that?
He
For
doesn't
you
care.
to?
I'm just texting him about it because I got to text
Yeah.
someone, and
Okay.
I
Do
texted
you?
Megan O'Connell about it, and I circled and highlighted stuff from the New Yorker article about the album,
I know you
and I
texted me
did that to you
some
too.
images. I do, I think in the spirit of our partner doesn't have to be everything to us. You could text me those
But
Robin
you were
thoughts.
getting too many texts, you said, so I didn't want to
Oh,
overwhelm you.
oh, that's so nice of you. I don't want texts asking me to do stuff,
But texts about Robin are
but
okay.
texts giving me silly information.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Like, what about if I go down a rabbit hole of actually, okay, so I have a close male friend who is really into like pop music, and he's obsessed with Carly Rae Jepsen, and I've
Yes.
harassed him about that for years.
Carly Rae
And
Jepsen is amazing.
okay, so now he's like, if you like this new Robin, if you're upset, and I was texting him about the new Robin album because I knew he would receive that. And then he was like, he gave me like a listen list of Carly Rae Jepsen songs that are like, if you're into dopamine, I'm telling you, you're gonna like, it's called like psychedelic something.
Yep.
I can't remember what it's called.
Sunrise or yeah,
Switch, psychedelic switch.
the whole catalog of Carly Rae Jepsen is
This is what,
astounding. I will make you a playlist
okay,
anytime.
make me a
Um,
playlist.
I have men who love Carly Rae Jepsen are maybe our most advanced sector of humanity.
Don't tell him that. I'm not going to tell him you said
Yeah,
that.
do please.
He doesn't need that.
And yeah, and I will go to Robin in LA with you.
You know what? Maybe we should do like a mother of it all section.
Yeah, I'm sure we could get backstage, get into the green room. Is Robin a mother?
Yes, that's what the
she's
whole album
she's
is
the mother of
about.
Swedish pop.
Did you
But,
listen to Sexistential? Have you listened to it yet?
I've listened to it, but
Have
I'm
you
not
read the
like.
Gia Tolentino article
No,
about it?
I have not read the discourse. I'm
It's
so sorry.
all
I've also
about
been
motherhood.
distracted. There was also a new Harry Styles album, a new Charlie Puth album, and a new
Okay,
Snail Mail album. So I've
but
been
this is
very
about
busy with my
motherhood. This
ears.
is in your
Oh,
sphere. Yeah,
okay,
she's a
okay.
mom. She's
Well,
got.
Charlie Puth became a dad. I just do want to put that out there, and you
I
can
know.
feel it. But go on.
Yeah, well, it's all about motherhood. You got to listen to it. She says, I think it's in that thing that I texted you, the screenshot, that it's about.
Oh, sorry. I didn't say I was going to read the text that you sent me. I'm just saying I will be like a willing recipient, and I will
Okay,
heart things
if
without.
anyone is listening and wants me to text them about. Okay, so in the thing I texted Sarah, it's an excerpt from the Gia Tolentino article about the new Robin album, Sexistential, and it's a quote from a song, Blow My Mind, where she rewrote some of the lyrics to be about breastfeeding. Baby ravish me, tear into
Oh,
my flesh, button down my shirt, go on, make a mess. And then Gia writes, it is perhaps the first song about lactation that legions of gay men will do poppers to.
yeah. I feel like there's probably been one before, but
Beautiful.
that's pretty special.
I know. Okay,
Wow.
well,
All right.
on that note.
On that note, let's send each other like just hundreds of messages about like the StubHub prices for this show.
It's only $90. You can get
Oh,
nosebleeds for $90.
okay.
I
Yeah,
know.
I'm in.
I know.
Let's do it.
I'll come to San Francisco and we'll drive together to LA.
Road trip,
Yes.
and I'll play Carly Rae Jepsen the whole time.
And Robin. Okay.
And then
Well,
and we'll talk about the overinvestment of modern parents.
there we go. All right. Transition. Okay, well, back to serious matters. We are very excited to have Professor Nina Bandelj with us today. She's a professor of sociology at the University of California, Irvine, and she's joining us to discuss her fantastic new book. I'll hold it up since
We
we
do it
do
at the
video
same
now.
time.
Overinvested, the emotional economy of modern parenting. Welcome.
Thank you so very much. This was the best ever welcome. 2 shots of the books. Mine is up here in the corner.
Yeah, I see.
I am so excited to be here and so excited because I have music recommendations that I can share with my
Ooh.
teenager who is totally into music. How did you know?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. It's like the one thing. Well, also, maybe you could talk to them about nails.
You might be
Because
interested in that too. Um, I
You need
loved
something to listen to while you get your nails done or while you do them yourself, I guess. I'm
that's
learning.
awesome.
Well, so we always open by asking who is caring for your kids right now.
So, as I mentioned, I have a son who's a teenager and it's spring break. I loved Miranda when you said that kids sleep in a little bit. So, he was definitely sleeping in today, uh, caring for himself and oftentimes pushing back on me trying to care for him more, which I kind of love from
Mhm,
one perspective, but it's hard to
mhm,
do as a mom. Let me
mhm.
put it right out there. I write about these things, but I am a mom, so I struggle with them too, and we'll probably
yeah.
talk about that.
Mhm.
But I was also thinking on this question, should he have some experience caring for others? Should he have babysat, let's say, as a senior in college? Senior in high school, before he goes away completely. And that experience of babysitting has changed so much over the years
Hmm.
that, we would have 9 to 12-year-olds, 12-year-olds babysit. But there was an article in The Atlantic called Don't Tell America the Babysitter is Dead.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah. I saw
provocative.
that headline.
It was about that sense of, wow, 12-year-olds. There's states not too long ago, I think Illinois had a law that 14-year-olds, even up to 14, needed supervision in the home. So,
Hmm.
that's a historical change that I wanted to point out by thinking, okay, maybe I should have kicked his butt a little bit more and thinking along the lines of, this will be good experience. This is
Mhm,
important to
mhm.
Right.
spend
But you
time.
also, the culture has made it stickier to do that than it was for like the
Yeah.
generation past. Yeah.
That's a
Mm.
really interesting. We just started leaving our kids home alone briefly while we walked to this coffee shop that's like 3 blocks away because we got the tin can phone. So they have a landline, they could call us. They're not like home alone with nothing, no way to like contact anyone. And we talked about how to dial 911. I mean, we're gone for like 15 minutes. But after we did it, I was like, is this legal? This might be illegal. Like I
It
don't know.
might
I
be
haven't,
illegal.
it might be illegal. I don't know. I
Yeah, we
just
leave our 10-year-old home alone, like sometimes for like up to an hour. He's very comfortable with it. We have a landline. He knows our neighbors. Yeah, we've talked about what to do in various scenarios. I mean, probably more than anyone ever talked to me about that when I was that age. My 7-year-old daughter just like doesn't want to do that. It's like too scary for her. So I think leaving them together would be dangerous, not because the world is a scary place, but because their relationship is a scary place.
fair.
But
That's fair.
but it is,
Is it legal there? Is California is 10?
it's a good
Or are
question.
we
Nina,
both
do you
like
know?
breaking the law?
I I don't. I do know
I
now that there are efforts to change these laws, to
Mm,
give kids more independence.
to
And I
make
think
them
even
more lenient on
to make them more
okay.
lenient. The Free Range Kids Movement and Let Grow Foundation,
yeah.
that Lenore Skenazy, who, talking about Subway and the
Yeah,
maps, a 9-year-old who took a Subway on his own, and she was called out to be a bad mom
Mhm.
because she let him do that.
right.
And then wrote a book and now has a movement to ensure that we think about independence that children could have earlier because that might matter for their longer term
And Nina, do
Mhm.
you know,
development.
are these laws like something that have just been longstanding forever? Or is this like the last couple decades or that laws like, that you can't leave a
Right.
14-year-old, for example, at home got into place?
That's a great question, Sarah, and a totally sociological question that one could study, right? What does law and legal change tell us about how we think of children? The things I studied more were child labor laws earlier
Mm,
on, and kind of this transformation of when children really were playing a big economic role in the family. Um, Obviously, worked on the farm when families had farms, but even in factories, and contributed considerably to sharing household chores, which is another thing we could talk about. What happens today, and how, of course, the legal change, I think in 1938 with the labor laws, made it illegal to have child labor. But it also created a whole range of cultural conceptions about, if a child is no longer economically useful, what are they? And
Yeah.
a wonderful book on this is called Pricing the Priceless Child by sociologist Viviana Zelizer at Princeton University. And she said we moved from economically useful to emotionally priceless.
Yes, I
Uh,
love that. I really wanna get in, so,
Wow.
I kinda wanna come into this book through I feel like there's these kind of core concepts, um, that drive the book, and, you know, one of the things that I wanna get into that I think will be a really familiar entry point for a lot of our listeners is the idea about the privatization of parenting in the modern era.
Mm.
And, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the data that you looked at for your book and kind of nitty gritty economic concepts that underpin that privatization of parenthood, and how that all relates to the stresses that so many parents feel really crushed by in this era.
And can we start by defining that? What does it mean that parenting has become privatized?
exactly where I was trying to go, Sarah. So I would go to the feeling of who feels that they're responsible for raising their children. These days, it's parents totally. Nobody would even think about necessarily the children who will be future members of society, and the fact that we're a community more broadly. I mean, some of us might, I hope so, that we're not just raising our own children and we have parental rights over those children. Sometimes feels like they are our own private property, as opposed to
Right.
part of community, part of, families, as part of broader society, and that we're thinking about intergenerational processes. So privatizing something as child rearing sounds like this is weird, because child rearing is supposed to be a very intimate and private matter anyway.
Hmm.
And when I talk about this, is to consider how it's in fact the social forces that influence even something as intimate as what we do with our kids. Uh, Today, I think it's parental feelings, parental choice is what we default to. And that is privatization. It's those sorts of considerations we have in mind, and belief that we're kind of solely responsible for what happens to our kids,
Hmm.
which means it's a big burden to think, any little thing we could do may make a huge difference down the line.
Yeah.
That is part of this cultural sense of privatization.
Mhm.
But it rests on a great political system that, U.S. is one of the 3 countries that does not have paid parental leave, federally mandated. And the other 2 countries are Oman and Papua New Guinea. So that's very unusual
Mhm.
that this is not part of our legal system, that we have not ratified, the U.S. Convention on Children's Rights, and
Or the
that
UN,
we,
yeah, the UN
the UN,
convention.
the
Yeah.
UN Convention, that's right. And that we have had this pushback politically on efforts that would provide more resources that think about children as a common good, as opposed to, this private responsibility, and what I actually call in the book a parental investment project.
Yes, I want so that's kind of the next thing I wanted to get into is also at the core of your book, it's like the, um, kind of crux of, like, parents feeling this pressure is maybe related to, this idea of children as investment projects and the concept of human capital, children as human capital. So I want to just read this one little quote from the book where you write, in the past decades, priceless children have become molded into human capital, a notion from economic theory that constructs individuals as measures of skills, aptitude, and education to be invested, like capital, in the labor market to receive returns in monetary income and non-monetary satisfaction. Um, so, I think reading that was like, oh, I am doing that. But I'd love for you to kind of talk about that concept that children as investment projects,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
what that thinking, um, uh, you know, is doing to us. What are its roots?
Mhm.
Kind of place it in context for us.
I'm very happy to do this. I also want to say that when we actually talk to parents, I think this is why your moment, Miranda, we would not use words like human capital. I mean, even economists until a few decades ago were like, oh, should we call humans capital? Isn't that a little weird? And now we use the term, especially in sort of public discourse, policy discourse, and it is an economic term that economists Gary Becker, who won a Nobel Prize for this work in 1992, lifted up into the more public and public administration sphere, and considerations of child development and investing resources into children that they would yield returns. So this
Mm,
logic of
yeah,
investment and return. And so then of course we do this with capital. Why not with humans to up skill
Mhm.
their potential, a lot of a sense of individual skills and capabilities could be upgraded. And
right.
this is how we would get to economic growth, which
That's
is
always rubbed me
yeah,
the wrong way with like, particularly in arguments about universal childcare and like universal pre-K, of like that we're only talking about it as an economic return on investment, and I understand that if you're going to invest a lot of money in something, it makes sense to think about it as a good, like economic investment. And I'm like, are we seriously saying that that's the only reason that this would be valuable?
Sarah, is it okay if I plug in a really important book on this? It's
Yeah.
called Thinking Like an Economist by a sociology colleague, Elizabeth Pop Berman. And it's precisely that. How did the reasoning that it has to be a cost benefit analysis to sell it as a good policy become the primary one?
Mhm.
She calls, I mean, the subtitle of the book is um, where efficiency concerns replace equality concerns in some way, right? Thinking
Mm,
of US public policy through kind of economic reasoning mostly, and not that this is a default way or the best way in which we could decide where we allocate resources,
Mhm.
but it has become a way that has dominated and across the political spectrum too,
yeah.
thinking in policy
Mhm.
that cost benefit and kind of appeals to human capital development. So this is what I trace as a sociologist, right? I look at words. I look, for instance, Google Ngram is kind of my little play toy when I want to see how discourse is changing. So you put in a word, not to, be promoting Google too much, but tools that now capitalize on access to all sorts of text over time. And you can check, what is the phrase human capital and how was it used in the before the 1950s and how it kind of exponentially grew. Same with this
Mm,
notion of even parental investment. Everyone's like, sure, we call it parental investment. But it's not so innocent to use words investment, human capital when we
Mhm.
talk about raising
Yeah, and
children.
like what do we, when we talk about children as investment projects, I think we're talking about a lot of different kinds of investment,
Yes.
right? So, um one of the things that comes up in your book is this economization of life and emotionalization of life. These
mm,
two um kind of movements that you identify as happening semi kind of almost simultaneously, right? Can you kind of unpack both of those concepts? The
Yes.
economization of life might be more familiar to people. It was to me, but the emotionalization of life was like a challenging one for me to get my head around, but it really seems so important in your book. So can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I think this word investment or to be invested in is a good word because it captures both of these processes that, I use big
Mhm,
words for. You shorthand sometimes call it in economic style, which
mhm,
is the economic style of reasoning and the role of financial structures and financial instruments that now parents have available, just money more broadly, and monies in plural, right?
mhm,
Also debt that parents now
mhm,
sometimes
Mm.
have to take on to raise children,
mhm.
which again, right? Why do we take that for granted as something that needs to happen?
You write about, I mean, I have younger kids, but you write about how common it is. I didn't know this, but it makes sense to take out a second mortgage on your house to pay for college. Like
Yeah.
that seems like a perfect example of, also when you said it, I'm like, well, yeah, I could see that. Like if I don't want to do that, but I could
Yeah.
see how people
I
do.
know.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
why? Because of emotionalization.
Yes.
Because using money is an expression of this precious bond and love and devotion to children these days.
Hmm.
Those two spheres are not in conflict. We sometimes feel like, oh, money, and these phrases, something bad will happen when money gets involved. But I've spent decades researching money. I often start jokingly saying, I love money. I really love money, but not for the obvious reasons.
You
It's
love
to
talking
study
about
it
money.
and
Hmm.
talking about it and to understand why people do the things they do
Hmm.
with money. So
Mm.
in this book, and that's part of economization too, is a lot of financial resources that we invest into our children, but we also invest emotions. That's the contemporary norm
Hmm.
of parenting, is to be invested into parenting. On one hand, obviously um, to love our children and to care for their emotional well-being. So that's where emotions are coming in too. But we are also invested in being parents. So there's a slight nuance here, right? One is looking at children and what we think we want to do, need to do for our children. But the other one that's part of this emotionalization of life that's really hard to grasp,
Hmm.
because again, emotion seems intimate, but why would how we feel be influenced by broader culture?
Hmm.
On this podcast that you all are discussing culture, I love it, right? Because that's the force,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that of course we pay attention to emotions of our children, but we also are preoccupied with this sense of what does it mean to be a good parent these days? And let's be real, moms especially.
Hmm.
And that's not simply because we somehow want to ensure the economic future of our children. So the explanation of economization of life just is not sufficient.
Hmm.
We need to put it together. That's why I say they go together so well. They're, the beauty and the beast that
Yeah.
really love each other. Um,
The
and
emotionalization, like it's the uh well, I think what's interesting is the historical context you place it in, where it's like we maybe were not always quite so emotionally invested. Not that we didn't love our children, but the primacy of our emotional lives, you kind of say, is not necessarily how it always was. And that really blew my mind a little bit because of it being sort of the why of like the
yeah,
children as an investment project when we
yeah.
are holding up our work as parents as the primary sacred work, meaning making work of our lives.
My understanding of like the course of modern civilization is that the idea of investing for your children, of sacrificing your children for your children, isn't completely new. Like that, my grandparents and their parents kind of would have identified with some aspect of that. So,
Yeah.
will you
Yeah.
bring us through a couple touch points that show the progression of that overinvestment? over time.
Right, right. Um, I think what's important is not that people some time ago were very careless about child rearing and they didn't sacrifice. It's always been an intimate
Mm,
affair, and people love children, and that's not something we're questioning. It's how this is done. And the fact that when it is so expensive to put children into school, childcare to begin with, college, when those prices are rising, it's really hard to meet those expectations. So financial sacrifices feel bigger. So I think that's what we're
mm.
talking about. The qualitative difference when you have both sort of really intensive financial demands that are different, and there's an eightfold increase, for instance, in how much money between the 1960s and 2015 parents devote to childcare and
Well, like
education.
relative to income and kind of,
Well, relative to
yeah.
other
Oh,
expenses. So let's say you
eightfold.
clothes, transport,
Mm-hmm.
you have to feed them food, even healthcare expenses also grew. But if it's a
Right.
pie that you have to devote to across different shares, it is the childcare and education bracket that has been
And
expanded
do you
so
see
tremendously
that
over time.
eightfold, multiplication as a combination of kind of policy and societal changes and personal actions?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes, I do. We talked about family policy, and we say, scholars who study it say, oh, I'm going to look at how family friendly policies are. Well, it's really a hostile family policy that we have in the US along those
Family
lines.
hostile
So we
policy. Yeah.
and we have and I wish it were otherwise.
Yeah.
Then this political background to this. Then we have rising prices for childcare and education, which I would say goes back to how much we value
Yeah.
investment into human capital. But then we also have a sense on parents that this is a reflection of good parenting. And that's something that I would say, at least my argument is, and I'm very happy to be proven wrong, new to
Yeah.
this era of emotionalized lives that we lead, how deeply entwined it is with what reflects on me, not just what reflects on society, and that the costs are bigger and, that's bad. Because we see, even though people express that they would like to, see change in policy, in our interviews, a lot of people did not even bring it up. We did not call it out intentionally. So we said, if you prompt people, that of course they will have opinions. But let's just pause and say, what else is on your mind related to being a parent?
Mm-hmm.
And I had wished so much they would say, it's unsustainable. I don't think I could do this all on my own. And it is okay if I ask for support more broadly. But no, and I think it's because people felt that would say something about them not meeting
Mm.
expectations and not doing everything they want for their children. And that's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. That's super
So I
interesting.
think this is what we need to consider.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Like, I always feel some kind of like pride in like saying, well, I don't like care if my kids go to college or like if they have, if they make a lot of money, right? Like I don't like I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on that, like, parental rat race. But my substitute for that is like I just want them to be happy. Right? And
It's,
to think of even that. So can you talk about like the
yeah,
cultural historical
yeah.
construction of that concept?
And Sarah, you're a terrific, unique person. And I don't want to
Oh,
say,
thank
oh
you.
my gosh, we heard this.
No.
This narrative from parents that we talk to. And I want to say 120 parents. And when I say we, it's not just myself, but a wonderful research team. I always want to call them out and thank them, if I can publicly, my graduate students here at UC Irvine. So that's what we were hearing mostly. I want my kids to be happy. Not really that I want them to be part of this rat race. And one could say, okay, well, they just told you something that they thought you wanted to hear. But I also want to pause on that and say, well, if so, then it revealed so much about the pressures they feel are, you know, or what are the social norms they want to align with. So whatever we were told, we take as not just data, first of all, narratives from parents, stories, sometimes heartbreaking, oftentimes elated because people love talking about how much they love their children, and in the same breath, and how much they want them to be happy, and in the same breath saying how exhausted they are and
Right,
how
right.
hard it is.
Right, like actually trying to make a little person grow into a happy adult, especially in the world that we live in right now, might be a taller order than having them grow into a, successful one, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah, and
is.
it's this combo, right? It's this hybrid of the emotionalization or emotional uh style sort of parenting plus the economic um style, kind of this model of like return on investment as an expectation maybe, and then the kind of like privatization maybe is like the third thing that's coming in to
Yes.
play, and this is all sort of
Economy,
in
culture,
modernity.
and political background, right? It's
Mhm.
really hard to write
Mhm.
something that is, um, well, let me just say, it took me 10 years. So
Mhm.
I had time to think through all these different social forces and lots of wonderful books that talk to parents. Also, books that I admire and used in some as models, thinking about where this notion of intensive parenting comes from. And
Mhm.
it is a sociologist who wrote a book in 1996, Sharon Hayes, who wrote a book called The Cultural Contradictions of Motherhood, thinking, why are we so intense about our children when we are also working and need to be intense outside the home? And she calls it
Mhm.
contradiction, but nobody really picked up on the contradiction. In the public discourse, people ran with this idea, oh, we're intensive about parenting. And intensive parenting, not only intensive motherhood, which is what she started with, became kind of part of the vernacular. But so I just wanted to take a moment to say, yes, intensive, but invested is the 2.0 of that, because there's so much money, there's emotions, but also the sense of self that we want to put into our children that
Mm.
Hayes did not talk about so much. And that is the product of emotionalization of life, in a sense that where we were fed so much advice from, left and right. And I analyzed books, parenting books, which is also what Sharon Hayes did. One of hers was Benjamin Spock's, I have it on the shelf there, called the Parenting Bible. But today, there's not just one, there's multiple. And where they come from is not from doctors, which Dr. Spock was, pediatrician, but moms, journalists writing about their personal experience, or professors like Amy Chua, who wrote a book, The Battle Hymn of the Tiger
Yes.
Mom. It wasn't a legal treatise from a Yale law professor. It was a personal memoir. So that's kind of the new way in which we're emotionalizing parenting lives, is by the stories that we hear, advice we're given, discussions that we have. That's also part of this culture that I'm trying to capture in the book.
Can you kind of talk about, in interviewing people and in studying this, can you give kind of one or two sort of concrete examples of like what that looks
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. So Janet comes to mind. I call her Janet in the book. And Janet talked about how thinking about children is just constantly present in her mind, in the back of her mind, even when she doesn't want to talk about it. It's, just she feels that she's responsible for and that she loves, and they're part of her constantly. And so I think this sense of such devotion to children, or how especially moms would say that children are the center of their universe, they're the purpose in life. I think, yes, it resonates with us, but that has changed over time. So
Mhm.
parents, for instance, would say that they think about building a bond to their children much more than they thought their parents paid attention to that. So, this was the question. If you were to compare how you were parented to how you are parenting,
Mhm.
and there were options. What about discipline? Is it so different? Not really. They thought, interestingly, because we would think maybe it is,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not in these data. Religion, is it more or less important? No. Values that you want to pass on? No. But it was that they thought this relationship and loving bond with their kids was more important to them than what they saw their parents perhaps pay attention to mostly or express as a priority.
Mhm.
Even this sense that, 93% or so, I think, from a survey of parents think being a parent is the most important aspect of their identity.
Mhm.
And again,
Mhm.
we don't want to say somehow not natural to love children. Of course it is.
Mhm.
But we have other lives. We have, partners.
Yeah.
We have siblings and parents ourselves, so kin. We have the community. We have our jobs. So we have various aspects of identity that could be salient, but it's for parents mostly. They would call out being a
Yeah.
parent as the most important.
I guess personally, I feel called out sort of because it's like, which is good. I think to consider, to step back. Your book in many ways felt like an invitation to step back a little bit from kind of without realizing it, maybe that I was automatically placing that role on this pedestal and allowing the role of parent to hold so much emotional investment. And that maybe it's possible that thinking that that is obviously just good is not serving me or serving my kids.
So let's just say, don't take my word for granted. Then let's just not think only Miranda has this experience. I want to call out that I would like to folks to consider that U.S. Surgeon General in summer of 2024 issued a public advisory about parental well-being and mental health, lack of well-being and burnout. So this is, I think, what we also have to bring in. Of course, we love our children, but when parental exhaustion and burnout is considered to be a public health crisis, maybe it's time to ask, what is this style of modern parenting bringing up? How does it impact parents with burnout? How could it potentially impact children? And what about society? Something
Mhm.
few of us think about, but of course, as a sociologist, is my number one consideration. And that's that everyone doing this has societal effects.
Well, that goes right into, I kind of want to get to um, after spending so much time with these ideas and really looking closely and talking to a lot of parents. And I know you read like every parenting advice book ever. So,
105
Oh
only,
my
Miranda.
gosh.
it's a lot. I mean, I like
No, and I should say not front to back, right?
skim.
Several
Yeah.
front to back, but the content analysis was looking at, what are the titles, who wrote them,
Yeah.
where did they come from, what do they pay attention to? And they mostly have turned to be attentive to the emotional
Mhm.
dimension of parenting.
So, you're steeped in this. So, what if we are a little bit overinvested in a way that, meaning just that our investment is maybe could be damaging to ourselves, then to our children, like what is the solution? How do we recalibrate? And yeah, what do you think about that? And this could be personal too, how this
Yeah.
has impacted
Yeah.
your own decision making as a
It
parent.
is the $1,000,000 question, if I say, as an economic sociologist who loves money. And I think these consequences are pernicious in some ways. I will
Mm.
say that when it is so much about money, and when most choices related to investment of money are considered emotional decisions and something that reflects on a person as a parent. Am I a good parent? Can I do this? And, parents with less resources would tell us that that's what they want to do if they could, would be to have more financial resources to devote to their children. And so these are the sacrifices we were hearing, and people's really hard-pressed situation where they feel the kind of pressure to do everything they can for their children when we're making this a very private matter, when we're not providing resources for folks to do so. And so, but some people do have resources. And so we, in this unequal world that we live in some ways, parenting then becomes an engine of growing inequality. How so? Well, for instance, if you put money aside into a 529 account, which is this education account to pay for college, or, grandparents give it to you. And I had, one of our interviewees was like, I really try to put money in it on a monthly basis, but it's really hard. And grandparents, wanted to do something great for kids, but now it puts pressure on the family. But you can, of course, this is tax advantage account, do something else with the money that you might have at your disposal. Or if you take on parental loans, those could be, great at certain rates for those who will put money elsewhere, but they could be really burdensome, not such great debt, more bad debt for some families. And so you could see how this slowly, in some ways, eats into resources that parents could put aside for themselves.
Like our retirement.
And
like this year, we were like, should we put money in our retirement funds? We can't do both, or the kids' 529s. Yep.
Yeah.
This is the question we asked, we said, if you had to choose, and parents chose children. Even when mom talked through with us on this, she said, I think I know I should probably do it for myself. That's kind of a rational thing to do. But I'll have to tell you, my gut reaction is to do it for kids. So I think that's where privatization of parenting leads to what I call in the book the tragedy of the parenting commons. It's this idea that, some people could pull resources for themselves and others don't. But if these are common resources in some ways, we are all going to be worse off, because growing really high economic inequality is not the bright future that we envision for our children, for instance.
Yeah, well, in your conclusion, you mention fundamental that like parents could consider, like one, which was kind of interesting, like because we talk a lot on this podcast about the societal structural failures and how that contributes to our stress and is uniquely American, and is also like something that we feel so powerless to really move the needle on, like in our lifetime, in our parenting lifetime. Well, we are invested in our future children's parenting experiences. But what about for us right now? And you write that we could take a fundamental step back from parenting labor. I think that's really interesting. And I would love for you to sort of talk more about that. You also write that you in your personal life are kind of always doing this dance. So, you could share
And
a
it's
personal
true. It's so
experience, too.
hard. I do want to acknowledge that. I think, I don't know, close to that section in the book, Miranda, I'm like describing how I was just done. It was too much. It was so stressful and exhausting. I'm like, I need a parenting vacation. I just want to. And, the issue is, if you're burnt out on the job, let's say hypothetically, and I do acknowledge that it's not possible in a lot of ways to just quit your job if it's a source of livelihood. But let's say hypothetically, we could imagine quitting that job, finding something else. But quitting the parenting job? No, right? We're not going to abandon our children. They're just not at all a possibility. But then, if that's not the case, then we need to change the conditions of that job. And this is what I mean by taking a fundamental step back from the
These
parenting
working
labor.
conditions are not sustainable. Let's go. Where's the union at?
Right?
Where's my
Mhm.
union?
Right? And who's the
Yeah.
boss? We don't have the
Mhm.
boss, but we could talk to each other. We could support each other in changing those norms. And we could talk to the policymakers and think about that as,
Mhm.
you're going to help us change the conditions of this job that is unsustainable. And that's something that we can collectively work
What would that
together.
look like
Yeah.
So
on
kind
like,
of a
I'm
social
thinking on like a
movement.
Yeah.
communal level. I have a pretty close parenting community. I feel very fortunate. We spend a lot of time together, kind of like parenting our kids in the same milieu. And I'm actually like hosting a conversation with the fourth grade parents based on Ruth Whitman's book Boy Mom, about
Yeah.
kind of these boys, and as they're developing into middle school, kind of how we want to think about parenting them and how we can support
Mhm.
each other. And so I am thinking about like my brain almost can't open this door. Like, what could we do as a group to say, no,
Yeah.
we're going to step back and we're going to kind of do it collectively so that it's a norm?
Yeah. 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 I would say one question that we could ask ourselves, and it's a really hard question, but maybe when we create supportive spaces, we can open up and really dig into ourselves, is to think about things we do related to children, but not really for and because of children, but mostly because of ourselves and how it makes us feel as either a good mom or not a good mom.
Like the
Like,
birthday
is there a
parties?
difference?
Mhm.
Is there a difference? And I mean, if it's not a source of stress, sure, if it's a source of joy, but if it is, something that adds to the mental load that and everything that keeps running in our heads, that may be a
Mhm.
voice we could quiet a
What are
little
some
bit.
examples from your
Uh,
life and
Yeah.
research of things that you think might fall into that category sometimes?
yeah.
Well, can I share
Yeah.
my personal
Uh-huh.
one that comes to mind? So, like, my son was interested in art, and they don't produce a lot of art in their art class. And I saw art done by this other second grade class, and like from a different school. And it was like multimedia and it was really elaborate. And so I signed him up for an art class because I was like, well, he's interested in this. And I know he hates doing stuff after school, but I want him to explore
Right.
this
Cultivate
passion. And
his.
he's not getting it at school. And I'm just going to cough up my $300 and I'm going to push him to do this,
Yeah,
and
because it costs, right? These
Mm-hmm.
right.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the date approached, I kind of said, I picked a time and I said, hey, we're going to do this class. And he was like, I don't like doing stuff after school. And I was like, I know, but I just want you to do art, and blah, blah, blah. And after a couple days of this back and forth, I was like, you know what? I would love to save $300. And all the other moms that I had talked to so excitedly about taking this class together, I just will not do it.
So like the
And
way that you sign the like wait until 8th cell phone, like collective cell phone ban, you could sign we will
mhm,
not cultivate our children as artists in this community. In this community, we
yeah,
believe that children should
who
just go to
cares?
school and be done with learning. Yeah, I'm not I'm into it.
Yeah, just like, I mean, I think realizing that came from within too, right? Like
Yeah,
I
he didn't say,
decided
"Mommy,
to
please,
not
please, please." Yeah.
care what they
Yeah.
thought, right? But I
Oh,
had to
oh, the
kind
change
of go
came
through that
from
process.
within, but also the idea, right? Like the idea came from you. Like it's this
The
reflex
idea
of like,
of
oh, my kid's not getting this thing. I should find a way for them to get the thing.
it was, am I doing this? Who am I doing
Yes,
this
right,
for and
right.
why? And it
Yeah.
was, I'm doing this for like an idea, like, oh, it is my job as
A
a
good
good
mom
parent
would sign her.
to
Yeah,
see this
Yeah.
interest he has and invest time and money. And it also makes me look good to all these other moms who also do this
right.
art class. They now think I'm also a good mom just like them. And then when I bail on it, it's like, oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, that is, maybe I'm going to let him watch Simpsons after school instead of do this enriching
Right.
art class. But
So
if I
much
think of him
guilt.
not as an investment project, but as
Mm.
a fully realized person. It's person to person instead of my little project that I must get an A on,
Right.
right?
I mean, and that's really hard, but let's just imagine that when there is a project, there are things to do. And that's what adds to our workload, right? So
Mhm.
this would, in fact, lessen some of the burdens, both financially in some ways, but not even that. It's even our mental load, that
Right.
cognitive labor
That I'm
that could be
holding on,
less.
and I'm not
Mhm.
like that I'm holding on to the like image of my child as an artist and thinking about whether I'm, protecting it and growing it or not.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Well, I think about Nina, you could talk maybe about if you want to briefly about your own experience, but for me, one of the things that I find is the biggest battle isn't the behavior change, it's the noticing the behavior at all.
Yeah.
Like before you can even change it, you have to catch yourself
Yes.
doing
Mm-hmm.
it. And that I
Yes.
think is maybe like 80% of the
Oh, absolutely.
work.
And it's because things are so taken for granted, especially the emotional side of it all, right? And
Mhm.
it's a personal feeling, and we're told to listen to ourselves, listen to emotions. And this will be maybe a little upsetting. Maybe we don't listen to all of these signals and
You
emotions
mean
Right.
that
deny
come.
one of my feelings? Yes. Yes.
Right. And thinking, well,
Uh,
as a sociologist, I love the idea that maybe the idea that I should listen to my emotions, which seems like it's coming from inside of me, maybe is socially constructed.
Oh, maybe I'm not being true to myself when I listen to them because they don't really come from me. They come from the culture. Bam.
I feel like the meme with the things going around.
And I do acknowledge, I do want to say that that
Uh,
is really hard. But I hope once we start talking about it, once we start discussing it, low key, leisurely in this wonderful space and conversations that we've been having, it seems like, oh, okay, something to think about, as opposed to what I will admit sometimes happens when people see this title Overinvested, and it's kind of like, oh, is it a judgment
right.
call on me? So is it
Right.
okay if I just say that it's absolutely not? If anything, maybe this wake up call and this time to step back to um, understand the social pressures on us, even in such intimate affairs as making decisions, loving our children, deciding what we want to do, thinking about them
Yeah.
constantly in our heads.
You're kind of giving
Yeah,
permission
the
rather than judgment, I would say,
mhm.
when I read your book, Nina.
Yeah, and the
Thank you.
kind of the social construction of what it is to be a parent, what it is to be a good parent,
Yeah.
as well as this idea that we have that is also you write in the book, and we won't have time to get totally into this, but the social construction of childhood
Yes.
and what it is that we think we're giving our children, like
Yeah.
this ideal that we like are receiving from the
Mhm.
culture.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
to
And that's
just
hard to
see that.
think. We think
Yeah.
children are precious and innocent, but that is, in a way, in which the society has defined who children are, what parents should do for them. Even smaller things like, co-sleeping, not that culturally that is often an accepted norm, but the Academy of Pediatrics, how is the official name for them? But
Yeah.
officially, it's better to have a child sleep on their own because it's not
Mhm.
safe
Mhm.
oftentimes. So, those things have changed over time. Or the fact that we had a cry out method that was kind of taken for granted that parents would embrace to put children to sleep and sleep train.
Mhm.
Think the word training, right? Training, development, burnout, all these words that are related to the
Mhm.
economy, really, not so much
Mhm.
necessarily family. Um, and that now, of course, the attachment parenting is something that's emphasized more as the way to go. And, how we think what children are capable of, and the fact that 82%, I think, from one survey of parents would say they did chores as children younger, when they were young, and that only 28% have children do chores.
Yeah.
And by the way, not chores that are just a little teachable moment and learning a lesson, but actually help out
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
So
Well, this brings us back. I mean, we can close on the note of what is too young to stay home alone, right? Like, who decides what
Yeah.
is still a child and
Yeah.
must be
Yeah.
monitored and
I know.
these
I don't
ideas
know if I
about
have my horrible mom moment, but I just remember that when my child was 12, he stayed overnight by himself. Shall I
oh,
admit that?
I'm
Yes,
inspired.
I feel
That's
that is
fine.
And I said,
permission.
okay, do you want to do this?
Well,
And it
oh,
was a crazy thing because
yeah.
it wasn't an emergency and family something that I had to do. It was me going to give a talk to Chicago from California that I was invited to do. So I feel especially guilty. And I know this is not just my own sense
Mhm.
because based on research that shows exactly the same conditions in which moms leave kids, let's say in the car for a few minutes, they're judged so much harshly than dads, for
Mm.
instance,
Mhm.
in the exact same hypothetical scenario.
Mhm.
So just to say, when we start thinking about it, it becomes possibly clearer how it's not just us, our choice, our feeling, but very much shaped by society.
Yeah. Well, Nina, we have to wrap, but before we go, I want to get any culture recommendations that you have for us. So it can be something you're reading, listening to, watching, and enjoying, just you or with your children.
I know.
Yeah.
How do I pick? So I listened, and you brought up Bridgerton's already. I don't know, Sarah, were you watching The
I
Diplomat?
love The
Oh, yeah.
Diplomat.
Me too. Same,
So
same.
I'm adding two: one the money, one emotions. The
Perfect.
loot by with
Oh
Maya
yeah,
Rudolph.
Oh,
people like
yeah. Yes.
that.
I love
Okay.
Loot.
And then I'm also thinking, shrinking and how
Yeah.
I talk about emotionalization as part of therapeutic culture. And
Mm.
when we see Harrison Ford playing a role of a therapist, like that's kind of the Indiana Jones is the therapist. That shows in ways that therapeutic culture
That's
has kind of
amazing.
entered.
That's so true.
Soprano Tony
That's
in the
very interesting. That
1999
show does seem like a
needed.
wonderful example of emotionalization.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Well, those are excellent. I love Loot. Loot is very fun.
Yeah. And, I know you talked about some sociology work. So I mentioned mental load. And the important one that I think somebody else brought up is What's on Her Mind by my
Yes.
colleague, Alison Daminger.
Mm-hmm.
If folks from a psychologist would like to think about schooling and education perhaps in some different ways, this is the Free to Learn by Dr. Peter Gray, psychologist, thinking about independence of children, maybe why chores and how they can be on their own. And a recent book that came out is Raising a Nation, and that's by Elliot Hassel, and it's called 10 Reasons Every American has a stake in childcare for all. So I think these, in some
And it
ways,
isn't
bring
just
us to
because
the
of the
topic.
ROI on it.
There's not just
Thank God.
ROI, which is 13%, but who
Yeah.
knows? And, you know, what I wanted to perhaps encourage parents with children to do is to rope them into a new research project that I have going,
Ooh.
and that is on pet parenting. It's
Oh my
how
God.
what we do with pets in some ways also reflects societal change in how we view them, the money, the pet economy
yeah.
behind it, how it capitalizes on these feelings, not just best friends, but, family members. And so,
Nina?
yeah, if folks want to send
I
examples.
I am happy to sit down for a long interview. I have to tell you, I just did the craziest thing, and got the pet feeder with the camera. And I was like, I'm never going to use the camera. Like, I'm not like, it's not useful to me. And I think it's like really creepy and problematic. I 100% look at the camera when I'm like away from home and it's feeding time. I get a little notification and I open it up and I watch them eat. And I'm like, oh, he's stealing some of her food. And like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had a problem until now. Okay. We'll talk.
Well, Nina,
Please.
thank you so much. This was wonderful. Everyone should get your book. It's
We'll link to
fantastic.
it as well
And
as all of the
yes.
wonderful other books and resources that Nina mentioned in our show notes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
It was such a pleasure. You two are terrific. I just enjoyed this bubble that we had here and conversation. And of course, extending an invitation to those who are listening to think about some of the things we discussed and find a trio like this to talk about them further.
Yes.
Thank you.
The Mother of It All is produced by Opus Knox Media with music from It's Electric. If you like this episode, why not send it to a friend right now? Go on, we'll wait. You can follow us on Substack at themotherofitall.substack.com, where subscribing will get you episodes and bonus posts in your inbox and connect you with the Mother of It All listener community. Plus, become a paid subscriber and get a hot off the presses Mother of It All canvas tote. We're also on Instagram at The Mother of It All, and you can email us anytime with ideas or feedback at motherculturepod@gmail.com.